Happy New Year everybody, I hope everyone has had a fantastic holiday season, and now with it being the beginning of 2024, it's the perfect time to reflect on the year of 2023 for film. I have to say this was a pretty amazing year for film. It truly feels like we are at the peak of the post-COVID boom, as so many films that went through the pandemic's production hell have come out with a bang. This year was not only just a fantastic year for the films coming out, but a really optimistic year for the future of film, as we saw the factory-like superhero cash grabs absolutely flop and the auteur films shine, with many legendary filmmakers releasing new films this year, but also a rise of many new directors and voices within the industry. Of course, this is going to be my top 10 of the year video, but obviously I couldn't see everything that came out this year, so I just wanted to take a moment to mention some of the films that I feel could have stood a good chance at cracking the top 10 if I had been able to see them. Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos looked absolutely stunning and hilarious, and every trailer I've seen of it looked like completely up my alley. Godzilla Minus One looked like an incredibly refreshing take on Godzilla, and it's a film that I'm very excited to getting around to seeing. The Boy and the Heron, the new Miyazaki film, looked absolutely wondrous and imaginative, and although I'm a bit of a slacker when it comes to Miyazaki and haven't done a full deep dive into the man's work and career, I thought The Boy and the Heron just looked absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna have to leave it there for films I missed, but before I get into my actual top 10 list, here's a few honourable mentions that were really close to making the list. I'm a huge fan of the Evil Dead franchise and had such a blast throughout the whole of Evil Dead Rise. It's one that was in my top 10 just a few days before I started to write this video, but unfortunately got knocked out just fairly recently, but I thought this was just a really fun direction to go with the franchise. The setting of the film was utilized really well, and I thought the family dynamic was a lot of fun. And this film had a really great amount of classic Raimi-isms that make the franchise what it is, while still letting Lee Cronin shine as a director too. The latest in the Mission Impossible franchise, Dead Reckoning Part 1, was just go, go, go. It never really lets you have a chance to breathe. It's incredible action filmmaking with, of course, Tom Cruise giving a great performance and doing some insane stunt work yet again. Beau is Afraid, the new Ari Aster movie, was a lot of fun, and especially within the first hour had some of the best directing of the year, where I thought that he reached a new height as a director. This would probably be in my top 10 if the second hour didn't lose me at parts, but overall it's a really great and wacky film with a brilliant lead performance by Joaquin Phoenix. Michael Mann's Ferrari was brilliantly and meticulously crafted on every level, and had a particular scene within the film that had my jaw completely on the floor in the cinema. Its sound work is some of the best of the year, and it is extremely well shot as well. The film can feel a little bit disjointed at times, but overall it's a really great watch. I'm going to leave it there for the honourable mentions. These were all really strong films, but I think these next 10 are particularly great, so let's get into the list.
Maybe they're tourists and the white guy is their tour guide.
Drinking at 4 a.m.
Yeah, you're right. That makes no sense.
Maybe they're all just colleagues.
I have no idea.
Past Lives is the debut film from writer-director Celine Song, and the film is this really intimate tale of two childhood friends reconnecting over the course of 24 years. The film is really quiet, you're just kind of hovering around the lives of these characters. Song presents this story of two friends on this quietly poetic visual plateau where the colours and camera movement can be vibrant and meticulous but never overly distracting. In my experience with the film, I definitely noticed the great visual elements of the film, but it was only after the film was settling with me after I finished it that it really hit me just how beautifully shot and composed this film is. Past Lives is very quiet with its drama and makes a very intentional decision to hit the emotional climax right at the very end. Although I do find some elements of the characters and screenplay to be a little bit shallow, all the visual elements and performances by Greta Lee, Teo Yu and John Magaro really amplify those bits I find shallow to a really great standard. It's no wonder this film has really connected with many people the way it has. It's a deeply personal film that I'm quite glad I just stuck on one night by myself. And when this film is put into the context of a directorial debut, it's a really impressive and exciting watch too.
You're not just famous for people on TikTok. or for people who read, say, The New Yorker, you're in people's minds when they sleep, which means that anyone who's dreaming, you know, could be your audience.
This year we got treated to another film in the catalogue of genuinely great Nicolas Cage performances. In Dream Scenario, a satirical comedy horror film where he plays a bit of a loser college professor that randomly becomes an overnight social media sensation as people across the world bizarrely see him in their dreams. It's probably the wackiest film I've seen this year that I've had the most fun in watching, as well as being a really well handled and insightful look into social media, celebrity and trend culture. As Nicolas Cage's character Paul Matthews' fame is this dream come true until the dreams he appears in starts to become nightmares, and then the fame that comes with that also starts to become his nightmare. It brings the question of at what cost does fame come, and I think the film handles all of this really well. As well as this, the dream scenarios in Dream Scenario are all really enjoyable and are often presented through really impressive editing and sound design. The way the film intercuts footage of a dream was really effective and probably my favourite aspect of this film.
Now, looking for a stranger who walks in, kills him while you were sleeping right above and Daniel was out for a walk is a shitty strategy. Samuel had no enemies.
Stop. I did not kill him.
That's not the point.
Anatomy of a Fall is this really intensely slow-burning courtroom drama that plays its story in this huge ambiguous area with all of its emotional stakes being connected to that drawn out ambiguity that never really gets any true clarification because the question and scenario within this film are ultimately unanswerable. The only person that truly knows what happened to her husband that day is Sandra herself, but when the evidence is against her, it's ultimately a painstaking question of belief. The courts can reenact and put together all the objective arguments they want in order to try and understand what happened, but there's no way of truly knowing. And because the film finds this ambiguity fascinating, it really doesn't matter whether or not she did or didn't kill her husband. No matter which side of the argument we may be leaning towards, there will never be a definitive answer to this question, and that's what's scary, is that the people around her are forced to question in the back of their minds whether or not Sandra is a killer and will likely never have any closure. The film is just impeccably crafted with an extremely intelligent screenplay and just as intelligent direction alongside powerful performances. It's definitely one of the very best films of the year and it's a very worthy Palme d'Or winner.
When are they going to send me a goddamn decent song? Scylla, what do you think?
I don't know if I like it.
What do you mean you don't know if you like it?
Sofia Coppola's Priscilla is really fantastic. It completely flips the Elvis mythos as we know on its head and presents just a really honest look at this relationship. I feel like a lot of other directors would have accidentally got lost in this being a movie with Elvis in it and inadvertently focusing more on Elvis and that royal world of his, but Priscilla is always about Priscilla. It's not presented as Elvis and Priscilla, it's Priscilla and Elvis, and I think that in itself is something to really be appreciated. It's a perspective that absolutely needed to be shared with the world, and Sofia Coppola also does a great job with just presenting their relationship as it is. As I said, it's a very honest film, and it isn't purely a character assassination of Elvis, but rather the uplifting of Priscilla. And although it highlights the awfulness of Elvis, the film doesn't try to act as a moral compass. It's just saying, here is this story from Priscilla's perspective, an honest perspective that hasn't really been considered until now, so make of it what you will. The casting of Priscilla and Elvis was just absolutely fantastic, with both two leads giving two of the best performances of the year in my opinion. I think the height difference between them was a really informed choice. Whilst the real Elvis was only about 6 feet tall, Jacob Elordi is about 6'5" and therefore completely overbears any frame he's in, especially when he's almost always sharing that frame with Priscilla. I think the film is also visually one of the best photographed films of the year, and production design too, as this world is presented as a crystal glass prison. I can't stress enough just how much everything about this film feels so honest and real. It's an incredible achievement from Sofia Coppola and easily one of the best of the year.
Or maybe you're not one of the few. Maybe you're just like me. One of the many.
I've already spoken about The Killer by David Fincher in a previous video, so I'll keep this pretty brief, but if you want more in-depth thoughts, then definitely go and check out that other video. But The Killer is for sure one of my favourite films of the year. It's so meticulously and just flawlessly crafted that it really stands out in David Fincher's filmography in my opinion. And of course every Fincher film is crafted to this incredible standard, but with The Killer being as straightforward narratively as it is, the direction really works to amplify that. Michael Fassbender and Fincher as an actor and director pairing is a dream come true. It's everything I hoped for, as the film strictly follows Fassbender's Killer, and it has one of the absolute best fight scenes I've seen in years, probably not since Netflix's Daredevil was cancelled, and its sound design is absolutely jaw-dropping too. Some of the year's best for sure.
What are you asking?
So what if, in exchange for my memories, my consultation, my willingness not to go to the press when the movie comes out and talk disparagingly about it, and you and her, you give me this position of music supervisor on this movie?
May December is a very intrusive examination of a relationship that is founded on harm and manipulation that wears a mask of being founded on love. All whilst Todd Haynes is also examining how the entertainment industry and sometimes the method of an actor's preparation for a role can really exploit people and fabricate a new reality. It's very deeply depressing and multi-layered. It's a really intelligent film that I think has come to be expected from Todd Haynes. The way in which he presents this though is also incredibly interesting. The repetition of that heavy piano score, there's this focus on imagery with caterpillars and butterflies. The film slowly peels back its layers and kind of reveals its true nature as a horror film, with these final ending scenes that work so well as just a really hard punch in the stomach. Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore give two of their best ever performances, but for me the absolute star here is Charles Melton, who I honestly think gives just maybe my favourite performance of the year. His character Joe has this kind of relaxed exterior that slowly shatters throughout the film as his children get ready to go off to college, and it stirs up all of these repressed feelings. There are little movements that he does with his hands that are just so emotive. And I think May December is going to go down as one of those great films that excel in examining the darker side of the American suburban dream.
How's your mathematics? Not good enough for the physicist he wants to be. Algebra's like sheet music. The important thing isn't can you read music, it's can you hear it. Can you hear the music, Robert?
I feel like Oppenheimer is probably the film of the year. By far and away the busiest film screening I've been to probably since Endgame in 2019 was for Oppenheimer. I went by myself to a Cineworld super screen showing and every single seat was taken. Sure, it was the Barbenheimer event that it probably owes a fair chunk of its financial success to, and yeah, Barbie did end up outperforming it at the box office. And I did really enjoy Barbie, so fair enough. But the fact that Christopher Nolan managed to make a 3-hour-long biopic about the creator of the atomic bomb and still managed to make almost $1 billion at the box office is just an incredible feat. And obviously the financial success of a film is never a good argument when discussing the actual film's quality, but I think it's relevant when talking about Oppenheimer, as in a time where cinemas are constantly struggling to survive, a film like this was able to just come along and bring people back into the cinemas in these huge groups. I remember when it had just been released and all I could see on social media was people talking about not just the film but the event of going to see it. The film itself is also just undeniably astonishing. There are some scenes in this film where The film then cut from the scene and I realized that I had just been holding my breath and had stopped breathing. Oppenheimer definitely feels like Christopher Nolan has reached or is only just reaching his artistic peak with filmmaking. It at least feels like the peak of the style that Christopher Nolan has been practicing for his entire career, because the character of Oppenheimer and the events of the film are just the perfect subject for him to go all out with it. But now it's a question of where will he go from here and can he top this? I'm not sure, but it's absolutely proven him as a one-of-a-kind filmmaking talent, and the future for him is still very exciting.
You! I'm just gonna try and ignore you. I just can't. I ain't even here. Or here.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, like the Batman last year, was just so refreshing to see, especially at a point in time where we're all just kind of awaiting the dominance of the superhero genre, especially the likes of the MCU, to die out, to hopefully point interest back in the direction of independent filmmaking and the return of the mid-ranged budget films. Across the Spider-Verse shows that there is still a place for superhero movies to exist, and that there actually is a lot of potential for experimentation and creativity and resonance within these movies. Across the Spider-Verse is not only just extremely impressive with the technicality of its animation and the evolution of the style that it ushered in originally with the first film, but actually is just a really great character piece all around. And I think the film really nails its scale by intertwining the multiversal threat with the smaller moments in Miles' life. It's just a really beautiful film that I absolutely adored.
Yes, I know. The Greeks had the idea that the steps you take to avoid your fate are the very steps that lead you to it, but that's just a literary conceit. In real life, your history does not have to dictate your destiny. Oh, there's Mary.
As I said in my Christmas video, The Holdovers just kind of felt like a film that I needed when I watched it. It's really just like a warm drink by the fire on a cold winter's night. It's an absolute comforting delight that feels so familiar. The three leads in this film are all absolutely fantastic. Paul Giamatti is in the running for my favourite performance of the year. Dominic Sessa, as far as debut acting performances go, is one of the best I've seen, and Davine Joy Randolph brings so much warmth and care to this film too. I really find myself increasingly in love with the characters, but also the way in which director Alexander Payne places his characters within the New England architecture and then amongst the urbanness of the city. The Holdovers is a brilliant amalgamation of characters, environment, and time period to bring to life one of the year's very best and also one of the decade's best films.
Billy on the inside there. Oh, you just called me a coyote, didn't you?
Martin Scorsese with The Irishman and now Killers of the Flower Moon to me has only just hit his peak as a director, and he's now in his 80s and doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Over the years, we've seen him become a more introspective and emotional filmmaker than he already was. In Killers of the Flower Moon, he drops us right into the anguish of the whole situation. It's a completely grueling 3.5 hours that never fails to keep me engaged. And that's not to say I didn't feel the film's length. I definitely did, as it's a slow burn, but the length is absolutely necessary and you kind of need to feel that. Martin Scorsese has always confronted his audiences with violence and evil and asked them to reflect on their own complicity with it, but in Killers of the Flower Moon it feels like he's truly looking that evil in the eye and not just confronting audiences with it, but confronting it himself and taking a look at how he has always been complicit in bringing that violence into his art and entertainment. And he's doing this whilst also taking a deep examination of the relationship between Molly and Ernest, which always finds itself still remaining the core of the film. I also don't think Scorsese has quite disliked one of his protagonists as much as he does Ernest, which I think is why this character is so fascinating to me. He's portrayed by maybe my favourite Leonardo DiCaprio performance. Lily Gladstone is maybe the best acting performance in the film, as she brings such a presence to every scene that she's not even in. And Robert De Niro is giving probably his most vicious performance yet. I honestly couldn't pick my favourite performance between the three, but Scorsese is getting a pouring of emotional complexity out of all of them. Thelma Schoonmaker's editing again doesn't disappoint. It's probably the best and most effectively edited film of the year, as it's edited in this disjointed polyrhythm. Killers of the Flower Moon is just one of those films where absolutely everything about it works for me, and I feel so blessed to have been able to watch it. Well, there we have it. That's my top 10 of the year list. As I said, it's been an absolutely incredible year for film. Please do let me know some of your favorites in the comments, but I won't take up any more of your time. Until next time, goodbye.